Hello. Today I'll be reading Island Loving by Creeply. Summary says, a kind of sequel to Jungle Loving. No, I'm not reading that one. The Chipettes and their sons are off on a camping trip as Alvin initiates his other daughters into their lifestyle. Will sparks fly? Are there a ton of OCs that are vaguely based on the characters from the 80s show? Yes, they all look human. You should read this and my other stories to find out. Not for little children, mature/sex inside very hot piece. Okay, y'all, I don't know how much of this I'm gonna get done because this is 40,000 fucking words. And it's done though. That's unusual. Anyway, here's chapter 1, which is called Chapter 1. Jeanette sat in front of the fire pit. Her large breasts felt cooked brown in the flame. What the fuck does that mean? What? She was not wearing her towel or slip and was basking in the heat of the fire in the nude. She tucked her long hair up and into a loose bun on the top of her head. A rustle came from the tent to her left. She looked, and Eleanor skipped out, her large round ass and perky beach ball-sized breasts bouncing in the air. Poor Eleanor. Her eyes were closed, and her hair swung behind her in a golden shimmer. She hummed before sitting in front of the fire and laying backwards, exposing her body to her older sister. Jeanette had seen Ellie naked 1,000 times before, but her mouth still watered as she looked at the blonde woman's luscious skin and wide birthing hips. Breeder hips, as Alvin had started to call them. The final tent flap opened, and Brittany sashayed her way into the clearing. Her perky nipples hard, her hair hung over one shoulder, her skin glistened in the sunlight, a lovely tan shade. She wandered over to her siblings and sat on a piece of moss, her knees drawn out and her legs folded to the side. Jeanette looked between her two sisters and the pleased little smiles on their faces. She sighed and sat back, her neck and shoulders a little sore from carrying her enormous organic milk bags around. So what are we going to do about all of this? For any of this to make sense, let us go back to the very start. The three sisters' names were Brittany, Jeanette, and Eleanor. Yeah, we fucking gathered that. You just fucking said, fuck. I hate this so much. I hate this so much. This is why I don't fucking read chipmunk fucking fan fiction anymore, y'all. This is so bad. They're all like, there's so many that are like this too. Anyway, they used to be pop music singers many years ago. However, they were traveling with a trio of friends and the friend's father. The boys' names were Alvin, Simon, Theodore, and Dave. They went to South America and went on a river cruise. Alvin and the girls in one boat, the rest in another. They were down in the Amazon River a ways when suddenly a storm came out of nowhere and the two groups were separated. Their canoe was swamped and they had to swim to the safety of an island that appeared out of the mist. They landed sore, wet, and frightened, their clothing nearly torn to pieces at their at their wits' end. They hiked through the jungle in hopes of finding some sort of civilization. They only found a hut resting against a mountain in a clearing. No one was there, and strangely enough, while it looked old, it was still functional. It had everything that would ever be possible. I can't fucking... It had everything that would be... I'm not editing this shit out. I ain't got the fucking time. It had everything that would ever possibly be needed inside, such as food, plates, bowls, cups, utensils, sleeping mats, hammocks, and unusual clothing that would... What? And unusual clothing that would never be able to cover any of them. It appeared as if it were designs for Amazons in a bad science fiction story. They had made a fire for the night and eaten food that Eleanor had cooked up for them. That was when the unusual things happened. The girls slowly grew a little taller, their breasts ballooned, and their hips widened, and their butts became fatter and perkier. They lost unneeded body fat around their stomach and grew thick around their chests and waists. Their hair lengthened and became softer than ever. Their lips became thicker and their nipples longer. What the fuck? What the fuck? I hate this. Jeanette's eyesight actually became amazingly good, and she didn't need her glasses anymore. She still sometimes wore them whenever she wanted to look stern or sensual. Alvin also changed. He became taller than all of them. His muscles grew and his balls and cock grew to mammoth length and size, swelling with sperm and turning into a thick length of fuck cable. Okay. Okay. The four of them lost their inhibitions and went at it like horny rabbits in their prime while also in heat. They married and had a wedding night. If you were lucky, I will also write that one day. And they lived happily ever after until they were pregnant with 6 bouncing baby girls, 2 per each girl. They were around 15 at the time, but physically resembled 20-year-olds. A fucking course they did. A fucking course they did. Because how else are you gonna get away with writing 15-year-olds fucking? Right? Just make them look like they're fucking 20. That's the right thing to do. Anyways. Around 7 years passed, and they had another set of 6 children. This time, Brittany had 2 girls and a boy, Jeanette had a boy, and Eleanor had a son and a daughter. 7 years passed again, and the first litter of girls joined their parents in their bed at the age of 14. Excuse me? You know, I was gonna, feel bad about making fun of people and uploading it publicly, but I don't. I don't. Also, eating the unusual fruit and vegetables that their parents first consumed when they came to the island. Alvin was tasked with having sex with all 9 women. He succeeded a little too well in the task and successfully knocked each one of them up with a baby girl. Total number of people on the island was now Alvin and the sisters, the 15 children that the 4 of them share, and their 6 grandchildren/daughters. The family tree might have been difficult to decipher, but they all agreed to treat each other lovingly and fairly, bringing the total number to around 25, with 4 boys and 21 girls on the island. They theorized that they could only get pregnant once every 7 years. So far that seemed to fit. So they normally went all out every single night with no worries. They also thought that they were stranded on an island from an old legend about a witch doctor. Of course it's about a witch doctor. Who would create fertility potions for those who wished to conceive. The island was surrounded by mists and on no map, so they assumed that they were in for the long haul and chose to stay for the rest of their lives. And their lives had been rather happy and fulfilled, until a few days ago, when it was approached their second litter's 14th birthdays. 36-year-old Alvin Seville pumped steadily into his 21-year-old daughter's pussy. Jackson was smiling happily and panting a little bit. She had wanted a quickie with her father before going back to looking after the 7-year-olds. It was her turn to look after them today, and she wouldn't complain, but still the little rugrats ran her wild. She looked into a nearby puddle in order to get a good look at herself. Her face was flushed, but her hair still looked good. Her pendulous breasts swayed softly from the rhythmic pounding of her daddy's cock. She wondered if Lulu, her daughter, would be hungry or thirsty. She also thought about how soon she might need to be milked like her mommies were. Just because she was getting older and was a mommy herself, that didn't mean she couldn't look amazing. If she was being completely honest, she would say her mommies still looked insanely hot for their age. A few wrinkles were popping up around their eyes and mouths, but there wasn't an inch of sag on their bodies or faces. Not to mention that they were the sexiest women on the island. If you were going by sheer size of assets anyway. Ellie's hips and butt and breasts put them all to shame. Sometimes Jackson would notice a little bit of milk dribbling from her breast if she was working too hard or had gone for a work out in the jungle. That doesn't make any... What? These people don't know how fucking breast milk works. I remember one time I read another fic on here, and they just squirted everywhere while they fucked. I bet that's gonna happen in this too. It probably is. Anyways, Jeanette had the best legs on the island. Her hair almost reached her ankles. Her skin and eyes were flushed with a womanly heat that made her glow. Her breasts were so firm and plucky that her nipples and areolas almost always pointed upwards, rock hard as her ass. Brittany had the middle ground between her sisters. Not as thin as Jeanette, but not as much oomph as Eleanor. Her natural grace, however, seemed to add an extra dimension to the mommy. She would sway her hips and laugh and jump and clap. Her 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 bubblolus behind would tremble and her skin almost conveyed her emotions. What the fuck does that mean? The girls had noticed that growing up, Brittany's cheeks would turn red when angry, pale when sad or scared, and a bright pinkish when she was turned on. All right. Took them a little while to figure that one out, as their mothers were always turned on, and thus Brittany was always pink. Jackson pumped back against her father's piston-like cock. She tried to clamp down, but there was no room for her muscles to do so. He filled her up to overflowing. Sometimes they would get lucky, and he would be able to fit the entire monster inside of her. But much like her sisters, there would usually be about an inch or 3 left out in the air. How big is his fucking cock? She was sometimes amazed that she was even able to fit his massive head inside of her. Does he mean... Okay. I'm pretty sure they mean his dick head, but I did not like the mental picture that just gave me. That is all. Oh dear God, Daddy, she panted out in joy. She wanted the entire island to hear them, but the 7-year-olds were out there somewhere. Sometimes she wished it wasn't such a joy to have children. Then all of them could be old enough and no one would have to tiptoe around the undeveloped youngsters. Yeah, you like that, sweetie? He said as he pushed himself in and again. She looked down between her breasts and saw a little bulge that pushed in and out. It was his cock, and it was prodding against the back wall of the girl's womb. So there you two are, a voice said. Jackson looked up and rolled her eyes. The fuck party police were here. The fuck party police were here. You're supposed to be watching the kids. Mommy said so. Wendy walked out of the woods and swayed her way over to where Jackson was speared on her daddy's dick. Wendy turned to her father and looked appreciatively at the specimen of masculinity that had been pulled from her sister's snatch. His prick was still red and throbbing slightly. And you, Daddy, are supposed to be helping the boys with packing. Alvin sighed and nodded his head. She's right, Jackie. We should go back to helping. But, Daddy, she whined, I was close. Well, you can finish tonight. You know what happens, right? Jackson sighed before standing up, picked up her towel and wrapped it around her bust. Her boobs spilled out at the top. It just covered her pussy, but if she bent over, it would ride up seductively on her thighs and expose her bottom cheeks. She did know. It was going to be a lot of people's birthdays, her and her sisters, her little siblings, and in a few months her daughter and nieces and baby sisters. I'll see you guys later, Alvin said as he quickly ran through the forest. Wendy looked at her father's fat schlong as he made his way through the woods. She blew air through her nose. I can see why he wanted to turn fucking daddy before the others. Jealous I thought of it first? Jackson snootily asked her more responsible sister. Wendy pouted. A little, she whispered. Jackson laughed her ass off as she walked back to where the 7-year-olds were playing. I'm so used to them saying where instead of were that I actually read it as where. 7-year-olds were playing. Beatrice sat on a rock, softly drawing on a piece of bark with some mud and berries that they had mixed. Mommy! Jackson smiled and knelt as Lulu went running full force and landed in between her breasts. They cushioned the little girl's breakneck pace. What? Oh. The little girl curled her arms around her sister/mother's bust. She had to squish them in a little bit to even reach partway around. How are you, my little munchkin? Jackson cooed to the little girl as she giggled and rubbed her face into Jackson's bust. Everyone called Brittany, Jeanette, and Eleanor Mommy on the island, except for Alvin and the boys, who usually referred to any one of them as Mom, and Alvin called them a variety of pet names. Where was I? Most of the youngest children called their biological mothers by their first name, except when being playful, and then they usually called them Mommy. Jackson loved either way. It made her feel the heat of a mother and still have the fun of a sister. Beatrice, Tesla, Susanna, Olivia, and Wendy all felt the same way. Lulu giggled again before she dug her fingers in between Jackson's smooth skin and the fabric of the towel. Okay, it's fine. She then pulled and it came flying off as the little girl ran off. the piece of yellow fabric waving behind her in a breeze. "Hey!" Jackson shouted in surprise as she was suddenly naked in front of her sister, daughter, and other younger family members. "Give that back, you little monkey!" she shouted in playful outrage as she chased after the little girl. "Keep away! Keep away!" Lulu shouted. The other little girls took up the chant and began to run around and pass the article of clothing around as if it were a flag. Jackson, a well-developed giant in their midst, started to steal it back. She avoided the pinches and tickles and occasional slap of the playing children. I need some water. She finally picked up Juliet and pushed her face onto the little girl's stomach before blowing on it. I need some fucking water, y'all. I'll be right back. She finally picked up Juliet and pushed her face into the little girl's stomach before blowing on it. The sound filled the small clearing and all of the running girls fell over laughing. Juliet squirmed and giggled, her face red and her hair wild. Jackson then smiled before she twirled the girl around and slipped off her wrap. Jackson then knelt down and picked up her own towel. She deposited Juliet next to Rosie and Janice, Kari and Lily, already understanding what was happening as she jumped up and ran. "Keep away! Keep away!" Jackson yelled as she walked back proudly to where her sister lay in the sunlight. The little girls chased after each other, shrieking and tackling each other into the soft grass. Jackson laid her towel out and sat on it. She held Juliet's towel in the other hand and used it to wipe the sweat from her brow. "Enjoy yourself?" Beatrice asked softly, her legs curled up underneath her, keeping her impressive ass directly off the rock. "Oh yeah, that was great. I love getting stripped by a couple of hyperactive kids," she said sarcastically. "I was talking about your role in the hay with Daddy, actually." Jackson looked at her pale sister in astonishment. "How did you... You're flushed, your top came off easily, and your pussy lips are a little redder than usual, like whenever you get fucked." Beatrice blushed and smiled a little at the naughty word. She was still an innocent child at heart, even if her little Janice was not 100 feet away, proving that she had a little bit of technique. "Did they see it? Your vagina?" "Certainly. But they don't know why it was so bright and engorged." Jackson pulled Juliet's towel over her face and fell back with a groan. "Thirsty? We have some water, coconut milk," Beatrice offered her dehydrated sister. Jackson just curled around herself and popped a nipple into her mouth before she started sucking. Beatrice rolled her eyes at her sister's childish manner. She fucking sucked her own fucking titty. Alright. "You certain about this? I mean, only once every 7 years," Alvin said as Brittany bent over another satchel. It was her third. Her others had morning clothing and afternoon clothing. This one was her evening towel in case it got cold or warm. "Positive. We want the boys to be a little ways away. We know what happens with little girls when we screw, and when we have knock-up When we have out knock-up times, but we don't know what will happen with the boys. It makes sense that we have... What? I'm having a hard fucking time, y'all. It makes sense that we go a little ways away. We can watch them while making sure that you have the girls well in hand." "Yeah, okay," Alvin said. He was hypnotized by his wife's impressive rear. Jeanette and Eleanor looked and rolled their eyes. "What, are you nervous or something?" Brittany said over her shoulder. She gave her rear a little wiggle. "Best bubble butt on the island, 21 years running, baby." Jeanette and Eleanor saw this and, huffing, went over with their own bags and dropped them on either side of their older sister before they too bent over to present themselves to him. "Yeah, Alvin, you've taken plenty of virgins so far," Jeanette said as she wiggled her ass a bit. Eleanor gave hers an impressive shake. Alvin suppressed a moan. No, it's just... You only get the chance to get pregnant once every 7 years. Are you three all right with that? Are you three all right with that?" The girls stood up, looked at each other, and gave little giggles. "What?" he asked, annoyed. "Alvy, you really are useless sometimes, huh?" Jeanette said affectionately. "Clueless, not useless. Clueless." That was me getting into this. "What?" "We might have been blossoming or getting bigger anyways, but we haven't been aging. Haven't you noticed?" Alvin looked at them. They were a little older, sure, but now that he looked at them, he noticed a few things. Not a single gray hair, a couple wrinkles, sure, but they were from exaggerated smile lines, not a bit of sag or flap. In fact, they hadn't complained about any joint pain or any fatigue. They're only 36. I don't think we're getting older. Hell, we could be immortal for all we know, Jeanette said happily. And if we were, wouldn't it be great to just go once without contributing to the population of the world? She stuck out a hip and leaned on it. Alvin grinned. You three always 2 steps ahead. Of course I thought this might be the case. He began cockily, only for it to be cut short as Flora and Isabel rushed in, with little baby Venus crying between them. They looked the most like twins than anyone else. The 14-year-olds had a ponytail on either side of their heads, an upturned nose like Brittany and her eyes, but Alvin's hair color. Venus was Brittany and Alvin's little girl. She was holding her leg and howling, Mommy! Daddy! Venus was climbing, but a branch snapped. Is she dead? They finished together. Brittany walked over and moved the little screaming, shaken 7-year-old's hands. It was just a little scrape. You three stop that now, Brittany said to the twins and the snuffling girl. Brittany leaned over and gave a kiss to the young child's ankle. What's all the noise? Susanna said, sticking her head around the corner and her slowly maturing body following behind it. The group of 5 females stood in the doorway, a perfect line of what seemed to happen on the island. Venus, who was young and scared, fragile, but so quickly turns laughing and happy. Isabel and Flora, developing, slowly, thin, with only the start of breasts and the development of their bodies and minds. Susanna, who had apparently seemed to accept life and was happy, her boobs 3 times the size of her little sister's, her hips a good size, with some meat behind them, nicely rounding out her figure. And finally Brittany, larger than life, impossible Amazonian Brittany. She was a goddess among mortals and demigods, perfection in all forms of sexual allure. Alvin rubbed his eyes before he quickly moved between all of them. I'll go and check on the boys. The boys shared their room with their sisters. They were packing up a few articles of clothing. Mostly it was just tent supplies. They wore kilts out of towels and swam in the nude. All 3 were strongly muscled. Teddy was short and rather stout. He had a loving smile and compassionate way to him. He enjoyed gardening. His hair was the longest and styled into a braid. It resembles his mother's in color. Thomas was long and ropey. He had small hands that could work out any sort of puzzle. He had a delicate dancer's legs and hair like his father's with his mother's amazing eye color and eye shape. Finally, David. He had his mother's hair color and his father's look at his age. Okay. He took the most pride in his looks. Sometimes he would groom as long as his sisters before insisting he do the most dangerous and thus masculine of the work. Davy was now laid out on his mat, his hands behind his head, kicking one foot. Why do we need to go on this camping trip now? We're going to miss our birthday. We are getting older. Maybe Mom just wants to make sure that we have one more, just the 6 of us, Thomas theorized. Yeah, you are the one who wanted to try and hunt a wild boar last year. What's the difference? Teddy said as he finished packing. The difference is we will all be stuck with our moms all day and night. Last year we were by ourselves, with the mud and the rain. Yeah, and we got lost for an hour and a half before they found our signal fire. Teddy shuddered at the suppressed memories. I had to eat mealworms, he whispered. You 3 done? Alvin said, poking his head in. He got various responses from the boys. He smiled and entered the room. This is a good thing you 3 are doing. Thank you. You're making your mommies really happy. The 3 couldn't help but smile at that. Thomas paused and looked in the dirt. He blushed. His mother was so beautiful and kind and so sexual. She had taught him that word. She made him feel strange and happy and full of life, even more so than usual. He would shoot glances at Isabel or Olivia, sometimes even at Tesla. They were so like his mother, and they all made him feel this way. Teddy paused in his packing. He reverted to a state of mind he had found. And it was just him and his mommy, her smell and touch and heat, her breasts and moth-water, her... her... her breasts and moth-watering ass. All there, all for him. It gave him butterflies. David slung his pack onto his back. He could hear his mommy talking down the hall and then laughing as Venus probably tried to hug her around her chest again, but only squirted a bit of mommy milk. The tastiest milk. He had been seeing his mommy differently lately, not as a caregiver, but as a woman. His mom was gorgeous, and he wanted to do something to her. No, that wasn't right. He wanted to experience something with her. He just didn't know what. The family was outside. It was early afternoon, and the girls wanted to be across the island before sundown to make a camp. Eleanor hugged Wendy tightly. Their breasts smooched together until Ellie slipped over her daughter's arm. She looked down into her child's eyes. You keep everything fair now, all right, Missy? Make sure your little sisters get a turn if they want a turn. Wendy nodded and gave her mom a quick peck on the lips. Ellie could taste a little bit of herself on their daughter's lips, like a reflection. So fucking weird. This is so fucking weird. This is the worst thing I've ever read in my life. This is worse. This is worse than the Chipmunk sex collection. Jeanette and Tesla were heated and making out a little ways from the others. She pulled away from her daughter and looked her in the face. Their breasts were leaking a little, and Jeanette quickly stooped over and cleaned her daughters off. In 3 long licks, she was clean. Behave and make sure the children go to bed on time. She looked up, and her daughter quickly nodded as she began cleaning off her mother. She wondered what the 3 girls would look like at the end of the night. Brittany hugged Susanna tightly. She could feel the milk sloshing around in the girls' breasts, and Susanna could almost feel her mother's breast milk being pumped. "I'll miss you, baby," she said affectionately before turning to her twins. She gave each of them a kiss on the forehead. "Be good, you little nutcases." The twins giggled and hugged their mother together. Brittany looked over their heads and gave first Jackson and then Alvin a kiss goodbye. She sneaked a little tongue in there to be nice. "Bye-bye, Teddy," Lily said as she hugged her big brother. He smiled down and patted her hair. He then hugged his sister Julia tightly. "See you soon," he said. The quiet girl smiled in response. The boys picked up their stuff and their mother's bags before setting off in the woods, following their mommies to their campsite. "Enjoy yourselves," Flora called out to her mother as Brittany, Jeanette, Eleanor, Thomas, Teddy, and David walked out into the woods. The boys turned around once and waved to their older and younger sisters before quickly turning around and scurrying off behind their tall, hourglass-shaped mothers. This is so fucking long! This is just the first fucking chapter! I'm used to things being so fucking short with these bad fanfics. Why would you put so much effort into this? It's so bad, and so fucking creepy, and so fucking weird, and gross. Brittany shivered happily at the implied meaning behind the words. Sure, her little girl might not hear it, but she certainly did. David caught up and walked beside her, his head just underneath the swell of her boobs. Yes, she certainly understood some things. The 3 sisters sat in silence until Brittany broke it. "If you lean that close to the fire, your nipples will burn off." Jeanette blushed and pulled a little bit away. "Hey, is your milk hotter than normal? Oh God, I bet it is. Give me a taste." Brittany made a swipe for her sister's jiggling breast. Jeanette leaned away. "Brittany, stop it," she said angrily, slapping her sister's hand away. "I just wanted some fun," she pouted, cupping her hand between her legs where they cupped her dribbling wet mound. Her tits spilled on either side of her arms. They had all gotten bigger since the first day they landed. From cantaloupes to fully inflated balloons to watermelons, and now they resembled beach balls. Except instead of air, they had milk for their babies, children, or husband, depending on whom wanted a taste. "I know, and I'm sorry. It's just... Where do we go from here?" Eleanor said, peering back into the tent where her son slept soundly, his dick still erect. She felt a bit of his seed sloshing around inside of her. He had felt amazing. "Well, I have an idea," Brittany said cheerfully. "We tell each other how it was. What happened, you know?" Eleanor and Jeanette exchanged looks, blushed, and nodded at the same time. "Okay, who goes first?" They looked at each other before smiling slyly. Bringing out their fists, they shook them up and down. "Rock, paper, scissors, go!" Eleanor had scissors, Jeanette had paper, and Brittany had rock. "Rock, paper, scissors, go!" This time Eleanor had rock and the others had scissors. "Aha!" she said triumphantly. She would be last. Brittany glared at Jeanette, and Jeanette eeped in surprise. "Rock, paper, scissors, go!" Brittany threw down rock, and Jeanette covered it with her paper. She held Brittany's hand while the girl steamed, annoyed that she had lost, only to suddenly become turned on when she realized that she would be telling her story first. "Okay, come close." The 3 sisters gathered around the campfire. Eleanor picked up a bit of mango and bit into it. Wide eyes and ready for a story, the juice traveled down between the canyons of her breasts. "It all started when we left the house, and I noticed him checking out my butt." Okay, here's the author note, because why the fuck not, right? Read this whole fucking thing and Drumroll, please. We have a cliffhanger. I will update as soon as possible. This is a sequel, more or less. I will go faster with more reviews, even if it's simple or insulting or suggestions, just give them to me. I'm glad that you accept insults, because this is fucking terrible and I fucking hate it, and I... In regards to the original, it was sort of choose your own ending, and it was left with a lot of open-ended conclusions. Sorry if it was confusing. Oh no. And now it is advertisement time. I don't want to fucking advertise your shit. I guess that's what I'm fucking doing here, though, because I gotta have a fucking link to it, I guess. I want to see my work made in fan art, hentai, or whatever it would technically be called. If anyone wants to do it, then send me a link or something and tell me about it, or simply do it and credit me. I don't know if I'm telling people who are legitimated interested or know someone who would do it for free. No one wants to draw this. Literally no one wants to fucking draw this. Anyways, Ross Bagdasarian and Alvin and the Chipmunks. All I have is this and my other stories. Please check those out. Please check those out and leave a review. A few of them will be getting second chapters to them. That's it for chapter 1. Chapter 1 took me 30 minutes to read, so I'll read more later. Bye.